Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, because I'm obligated to be here. And Aaron, Quinn, Anthony Prohaska, you guys joined me as well, which is lovely and gracious of you to join while I wallow in self-pity and misery. Aaron, how's your day today?
It's not a good evening, Greg. I got bad news for you. It's not a good evening. And I tried getting out of it. I tried telling you, my soul is broken. I have a doctor's note.
I think there's documented proof of me threatening to drive up there and work you like a puppet. I'm pretty sure
the dog ate your mid-game notes. I'm not prepared.
Yeah. But here we are. But you know what? As with all the losses I've done in post-game shows, I do think this will be cathartic for all those joining us in the chat tonight. Super appreciative of you guys because this is going to help us get out of it and get through this. And hopefully this will be a cathartic, therapeutic thing that we can get past because the Bills got a quick turnaround. This is the worst possible way to have a quick turnaround. And so we'll talk it out now.
Oh, Anthony, we'll get into all the different things of why and how this is a dangerous front-running team that can put it on teams when you get it rolling right, but they're also a dangerous front-running team that when they get punched in the mouth, they can get rolled, and today they got rolled.
Correct. They did. I came into this season, Aaron and Anthony Romeo were on an episode of Disguise Coverage when we did a season prediction thing. I had the Bills losing this game to the Colts earlier in the year. Granted, things have changed. But so I came into this game with a thought of like the Colts are still good. I like the Colts. I could see the Bills losing. That being said, this is the most frustrating loss of the year for me. I mentioned that offline. Everything you said was spot on, and I'm hoping that this is cathartic and therapeutic, as Aaron mentioned. But it's not great right now, and we are kind of contractually obligated to be here, as you mentioned the intro, and thus we are here contractually. So I'm just excited to get into this. I don't know what I'm more excited for, to do this or to get into the tape and get ready for shows this week and the film room and all that. Eric,
you want to watch this back?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited for it. Yeah. Me and Eric Wood's going to be joining Eric Turner and I Tuesday. I can't wait to just watch all this and talk about it again. I'm super jacked. I hate it.
Oh, I hate
Good times.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So, overall, we'll get into it today. And, I think it's interesting. And it starts right at the top with our quarterback. Yeah. And when I talk about being a front-running team, I mean it. The Bills are a dangerous team with weapons that can put up a lot of points. When they get ahead, they have a defense that can pin their ears back and be able to hurt you. They have a quarterback that gets confident and gets rolling and will embarrass you. And it scares me a little bit that I think we have a front-running team, and part of that is because of our quarterback. And when he got down today, we talked about it before the show, you could see it on the bench. You could see that he was down. You could see that he was concerned and worried, and that's frustrating to wonder if the team follows his lead in that they're going to roll teams and they're going to get punched in the mouth when it's a game like today.
Yeah, I mean, the team definitely follows his lead because we live and die by Josh Allen's arm, right? The success comes when he's having good games, and these bad games that he has it kind of gets away from us. I don't know, to start the game, Josh Allen was actually having a pretty nice game, right? They had the penalty that stalled out that first drive. Otherwise, they were looking pretty good. That penalty stalled out that first drive. I can live with that interception, right? I thought Gabe Davis, they got away with a defensive pass interference on that interception big time. But again, I can live with that if they're calling it consistently, which later in the game we found out they weren't calling that consistently. So I was fine there. And then he actually had a pretty good first half. Like the game really didn't get away from him. So it's hard for me to say necessarily that they, played poorly because Josh Allen played poorly. I think what happened was they were playing poorly and Josh Allen tried to press, right? He tried to come out and be the guy that led the team out of playing poorly and just didn't have enough in the tank today. And I'm sure Eric and Anthony will get more into the tape. I don't want to rewatch this game for the rest of the week, but you guys are welcome to, and talk about a little bit more how that started to get out of hand. But we were saying here before we went live, the thing that I think is going to be the most frustrating for me this week is I know Josh Allen's going to get in this post-game press conference. He's going to have his little sad face and he's going to sit there and tell us how he needs to play better and all the same stuff we hear every time the Bills lose and he has a bad game. And I got to tell you guys, I love Josh Allen. I love all the fun stuff, him cracking beers and welcome Canadians back. And when he plays good and we're lighting teams up on the scoreboard. But this part of it, when you have a tough loss against a good team, I don't want the pouty face anymore. I don't want the excuses. Own it. That's fine. But no more of the pouty face. Oh, I just got to be better and built-in excuses. I'm kind of sick of that. I'm over it. We're in year 4. It's time to be the leader and pull this team out of bad games like this and be the reason that a team comes back in a game like this and doesn't just stall out for the entire rest of the game.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there with that. Like, he's kind of run out of that. I think we've had too many now of this loss is going to fire up Allen and the team. Well, this will be the one.
I just tweeted that out earlier. Yeah.
Like, how many now is, this will be, here's the screenshot of his face on the sideline. Yep. We're going to be galvanized now. Everybody watch out. And it's like, okay, we continue to do it. So I'm burnt out of that. I think that is a legitimate thing and a real thing for some teams and some players. But at this point, I think that's like too many get out of jail free cards used by Josh Allen and this team at this point. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to anybody being like, oh, you saw how upset Allen was at the post-game presser, or, what was said by this coach or this person. Like, you can tell, like, this isn't good for them. They're ready. They're going to turn it around, this and that. And no, I'm not buying that either. And, Allen was good on the ground today for a decent amount of the game, as were some of the running backs today as we jump into the run game talk. Matt Breida looked fun on a couple touches there, but
had a few moments.
He had a drive going. Greg even commented this was the Matt Breida drive.
They took him out, and then everything stalled. It was pretty apropos of the day.
That was my biggest thing. I didn't know if maybe he was gassed because of the long run, and then he got the ball right after and made some moves. So I was like, maybe he's not.
He was confused why he
ready.
Was in the game multiple plays. It was weird.
Yeah, he didn't get it. I didn't like how. And you guys know I'm like Team Breida. I had somebody, Marissa, I forget what her handle is on Twitter. She did that graphic of if Breida sits, we riot last week. I wanted to see him get touches early in this game. I liked what he brought last week in a limited showing. I know he had the fumble, but I just thought he added another dynamic to this offense last week. And even though it was the Jets, I thought it was something that could translate against different opponents and continue to be a sustainable piece. We didn't see him a lot in the first half, if at all, a couple times here and there, but it was really not his show. They come out in the second half and they give him some touches and try and get him established. And we saw what he can offer. Singletary had some nice runs. Overall, we're looking at Breida with 5 carries for 51 yards. Devin Singletary with 3 for 17 and Zach Moss with 3 for 5. I know game script is going to play a heavy majority in what happened in terms of pass run ratio, but I think this is another week where we're sitting looking around at kind of what the run game scenario is and what are we doing with the running backs and what's going on in the backfield. And I know that'll tie into the offensive line, but I'm really perplexed with the backfield at this point and also with what the coaches want to do with it. Like, I feel like Matt Breida has warranted more snaps and has looked the most effective out of everyone. But we continue to not see him. So I don't know, maybe there's something going on in practice where we're not seeing, and maybe, he's not connecting the dots that way, but I'm a little confused and perplexed with this backfield at this point.
I know them going to him in the second half was a thing. Like, I think that was intentional. Yes. We'll see what it means later on, but that was a conscious, they weren't mixing him in. They were going to him to give the team a spark. We'll see what that translates to later on, but that was definitely a conscious decision from there. Any thoughts on the run game, Aaron?
Well, Greg, last year, we kept talking about how Moss seemed to be building and ascending, right? Like, every time I saw him touching the ball, I saw more coming from him. And honestly, so far this year, it has actually gone the opposite way. I thought he started out pretty good, and coming off that injury this preseason, we're seeing some of that same, hey, he's building back and getting healthy. But really, it's gotten worse. Every time he's touching the ball, it feels like very unproductive, and plays that just don't seem to move the offense forward or anything like that. And when you see Breida come in the second half and have that speed and ability to pick up a first down on a single run, like what's that? I didn't even know our running backs could do something like that. So definitely that speed is needed right now in this offense. And, it's nice for a running back like that, where you can get more out in space and pulling. Like that's what we want to see more out of this offense. Ultimately in this particular game, it's going to be hard to judge this line or this running game, because we're going to talk about the offensive line in a little bit and all that shifting. Obviously that was the big story of the week. How does that impact the run game when they get everybody back? Do they go back to Moss and Singletary as the primaries, or are they going to insert Breida and get that speed going? I don't know. I'm starting to lean towards Anthony. I wasn't with, Matt Breida is the savior that's going to, change this running back room, but I am starting to think like, hey, that speed's real. He's showing a little bit less that he's a CJ Spiller like we saw in the preseason, that he's just bouncing outside every time. And if that's the case, then I do think that speed element matters, and that they have to find ways, even if it's just 8 touches, or 8 plays a game where they're getting the ball in his hand and say, hey, go try to make a play and get an explosive for us. Yeah,
I think that he at least warrants, a drive or two, a half, being able to be in a position where he can be a featured part of the offense and part of the game plan. And that goes into the receiving game here today. It was a weird game where we were down with a lot of garbage time, but didn't really put up a lot of stats either. Knox led the team with 10 targets. Diggs had 6 targets, but only 23 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. So, he had some production, but nobody else had over 27 yards receiving. That's a really weird situation. The one interception, it kind of looked like Davis was being held and couldn't get back, but it certainly wasn't a fantastic effort to get back. We saw multiple drops today. I think Knox had 2 or 3. Another one from Beasley, another one from Davis. Josh wasn't doing him any favors. Some of them were high, some of them were fast. The weather wasn't great. There's factors that go into it, but they weren't doing anything to go out of their way to help, and that hasn't been the case this year. For the most part, the receivers have been a net positive, and they've been making a difference in their ability to make up for if he throws, go back and make a play on a ball. But today wasn't that day. We weren't seeing that. The one play that Beasley went up high for it, you could see him looking. There was no one near him, but he was looking to see if he was going to take a hit. And we've talked about that the last couple games. If that's the case, then sit him down, let him rest. Don't make him be out there if he's going to be that apprehensive about taking a hit in those ribs. Broken ribs are no joke. That's not a slight against him as a person. That doesn't mean he's not tough. Right. I appreciate the fact he's trying to gut it out. But if he's not going to be able to make a play and he's going to be looking for that hit to come, and that's going to make you lose focus on the ball on a critical third down catch, well, then don't have him out there. Work on something else. Let him get some rest. I don't know what else is there. So it's, I'm not nervous about the receiving core long term. Having Knox, Davis, Sanders, Diggs, Beasley, all those pieces, they're going to be fine. That's going to be a strength of this team going forward. Today, I don't think would have been any different if they started making those catches, but it certainly added to the embarrassment today. In other games where maybe they scrap it together and keep it closer than what the score ended up being, they added to it today in the overall embarrassment.
Yeah, I think, one, you brought up a great point. In the sort of Knox regressing to drops today was really the tale of the game for everybody. It seemed like everybody had regressions back to the worst forms of themselves. And we'll talk about my guy Levi had a couple on his side of the ball. Like everyone seemed to be the worst version of themselves this afternoon. And I agree with you. Some of it's weather, but ultimately, there was a few of them that one in late in the game where Knox, it just went through his hands. I don't care what the weather is. Like, you're paid to catch that.
You could see him afterwards just look at his hands like they were going to tell him the story.
Like, what happened, guys? To the point on Beasley, it's tough, right? Because I think if he doesn't catch that third down, they probably don't even score in this game, right? Like, he allowed them to continue that drive and score. But
that was a really nice catch. Good extension. Got the feet down.
Great catch. Not a great ball by Josh there
no.
either. But I agree with you, Greg. Like, if he's not going to be healthy to be able to be used as a weapon, because what makes Beasley so special in this offense is when they're stagnant, when they're stalling, that they in the past can feed him and spark this offense, but they weren't doing that. And I think the reason they weren't doing it is because they know that he's pretty hurt and he's got rib injury, and who knows the extent of what that rib injury is, but he might be needing to rest. Like if you're not going to utilize him and be that third down guy and feed him the ball when you need a spark, then to me, it's really hard to say, keep him as somebody that's active on this roster and just sit back and let him heal, because you are exposing him. That throw, if there was somebody there, he's full extended, he's got a rib injury, you're exposing that to a much worse potential injury, where now you're dealing with not having a Cole Beasley going into a tough stretch. So that's a tough one. I'd like to see Beasley just rest up until he's fully healthy, because this offense, everybody talks about, hey, we got to feed Diggs. And I agree, definitely feed Diggs. He's the best wide receiver on this team. But having the ability to also feed Cole Beasley to be that spark that gets the offense going is super important in games like this. And clearly the team didn't think he was healthy enough to go at him and feed him in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what you guys are spot on with everything. I don't want to drill too much home with wide receivers and tight ends. I think my overall frustration with it is something you mentioned, Greg, like a couple of the drops were like not great throws by Allen, but they still could have been caught. And I think that's the frustrating part with this game today, is it was like we just needed somebody to make a play at some point, somebody to bail out someone else or help out someone else, and we just couldn't make a play. And on the other side, we were talking about this offline, the Colts are running the ball so well, but whenever they had to make a pass, Wentz put it in like a perfect spot, or someone made a catch and got open the right way and got the first down. It just seemed like anytime the Colts needed to make a play, they did. When the Bills had that, they had no one bailing each other out. It was everybody just kind of playing subpar, and it all just snowballed and culminated into what we got.
Yeah, and one of those big storylines going into this game, obviously, was Spencer Brown ending up on the COVID list, and we knew that was going to shuffle the offensive line around. Nobody really knew how that shuffle was going to end up, but they really just went back to the well, right? They brought back Cody Ford, who nobody really wanted to see play in a Bills uniform anymore, and then there he is, and moving Darrell Williams back to tackle. In the beginning of this game, I thought, God, this is a terrible decision. I don't want anything to do with Cody Ford. He got blown up by DeForest Buckner a couple times, and luckily the Bills' passing game was quick enough. Dable had some nice stuff scripted to sort of offset, knowing that they were going to have poor pass protection in this game. And those pressures didn't really have an impact. But as the game settled in, I actually didn't think there was a ton of terrible moments. They weren't a great offensive line performance, but Josh had some time in this game. And I think he took too much time to attack this Colts defense. I think the way you beat this Colts defense is, they're going to throw some different looks at you. Eric broke down that defensive look of what the Colts do. They're going to throw some different looks at you, but there's going to be small windows that are openings in this defense, and you have to attack it quick. And Josh didn't find those windows and attack it quick. And the offensive line gave him enough time to do that. And then he was holding on the ball for a number of times. He had some clean pockets, led to drops, missed plays. So it wasn't, that was a big talking point going into the week. They didn't play as bad as I thought they were going to play. I thought Josh was going to be running for his life like we saw in that Jacksonville game. We didn't really see that. And some of that was schemed up, and some of that was that they didn't play as poorly as we expected. I think in the run game, they played pretty poorly, and we saw that. But overall, not as bad as I really thought Josh was going to be eating turf all day long and just bailing out of pockets and running for his life. And there was a number of times where he had clean pockets and Josh didn't make the play, or a receiver dropped the ball. So it wasn't all on the offensive line today. I'm sure they're not going to get graded great in that they gave up a number of pressures, but this could have been a lot worse with the offensive line that the Buffalo Bills threw out there. And hopefully Spencer Brown comes back and we never have to talk about this unit in that way again.
Yeah, I think Cody Ford had his moments. He bounced back. He got, some really embarrassing ones early on, but then came back. I thought they did a good job kind of scheming around that at points early where they were moving the pocket, bringing in double tight end, a lot of Reggie Gilliam, a lot of play action away from that, and it was flowing. And then they showed how thin this is, that when they had anything go wrong, you had the penalty, wiped out the easy first down that Josh had on that quarterback sweep, which would have been a nice, a drive to respond to the opening score. Then you just see things unravel and go downhill. And, had something going pretty well, and then Kwity Paye comes by and knocks the ball out of Josh's hand on the one pass rush. Otherwise, Williams had a pretty decent game outside there. Josh wasn't hit repeatedly all the time. But obviously it shows, you've been very clear, Aaron, that I don't know that John Feliciano's some big upgrade of what the team has here, but having Feliciano back in, having Brown back in, which moves Williams back to guard, is at least the best performance we've seen so far from this offensive line. So I think they need to get back to whatever they're going to end up being to find out if this team still has a chance to turn it around.
Yeah, I came into this game thinking the offensive line versus the Colts defensive line was going to be like the telltale story. I think you guys nailed it. It wasn't a great performance, but I'm not looking back at this game like, well, the Bills O-line lost this game. Cody Ford lost this game. I'm sure some people will say that because he got that false start on that first drive and backed us up a little bit, but
definitely hurt. Right?
It definitely hurt. But the Colts rushed a lot of 4. I thought the Bills did a good job of using Morse to double team Buckner when he was lined up on Ford. And the
Greg
line
is
held
so
up.
sick.
Yeah,
For those that are on the fire, I feel so
through.
bad for him powering through this. Guys,
through.
not to cut you off, Anthony, but it's so hard to come on and do this after a loss, let alone sick. So hats off to my boy Greg.
Appreciate it. I hate life.
This has been multiple Jordan flu games in a row, like for Greg. Yeah, he's powering through. The Bills probably made him sicker today.
Yeah, didn't help.
Yeah, I'm sure I could have felt better.
Yeah, right.
If not for the game. But this is the sickest I've been the entire time. It's wonderful timing.
Coincidental. Yeah, the Bills win would have been like a Z-Pack injection right to you. But so the O-line was not the reason we lost, but not great. I thought it was interesting again. Like the Colts they blitzed a couple times. But Aaron, you nailed it. Like the key, they were rushing 4, but they were playing so many coverage games on the back end. They came into this game running 133 single high snaps, but they also ran 123 two high looks, which was the 6th most in the NFL. So they were versatile in terms of what looks they were showing on the back end. And they ran a lot of two high safety today. Looked like cover 2. I need to go and see the film to make sure I can confirm that on the back end. But the coverage did a far superior job against this Bills offense than the Colts defensive line. I thought the Colts defensive line, whether they failed or succeeded, would tell the story of this game. And I don't think it really was. Like it was more of what the Colts did with their back 7 against the Bills offense. And yeah, we saw a couple nice things in the run game. I liked some of the fold blocks and the tosses they did. We saw Knox crashing down a couple times. We got Morse and Bodker out in some space. We got Morse and Cody Ford out in some space on some runs for Breida on a couple of those tosses. That's also where I think Breida helps as well. His speed and his ability to threaten the outside, it allows the Bills to do more of that with their linemen and get them out in space and be able to stay versatile up front, which I thought helped a little bit when we were able to do that. But not the reason we lost, but not a thing that buoyed us forward. And we're sitting here asking the same questions again. And exactly to Aaron's point, exactly Greg to your point, like we're waiting. Well, I want Feliciano to come back. That's not like a good thing. Like that's like the fact that we're waiting for that.
You're saying it's sad that we're waiting for that.
We're waiting for a below average interior offensive.
That's exactly it.
That's
what we were waiting for. They went more 6 offensive linemen again today, with Ryan Bates, which made me want to again be like, if you like Bates so much, just like put him in at right tackle and then leave Gerald Williams at guard. Like, let's see what we can do. It's a very interesting decision making up front.
I get it. I mean, they're trying to be able to move it to where you're getting some extra help.
Oh yeah, and I like that.
Not wide. So I don't mind that part of it, but for the Herr drive of the game, obviously there's not a lot of choices here. The 11-play, 73-yard touchdown drive. They had gone down 14-0, interception on the first drive. Colts come right back, punch in another touchdown. Really could have gotten out of hand quickly. They score. Bring it back together. Even the next drive, the field goal drive, there is where there was still some hope. Okay, they got a chance here. They can pull it together, and then you have the freaking fumble by Isaiah McKenzie where really things unraveled. I had put out a tweet that was kind of like that punt block for a touchdown against Pittsburgh, where it was an ugly game. They didn't really deserve to be in it, but they had a chance to get back into it and make it a game. And then a terrible special teams play kind of breaks their back, and it just goes from there. That drive gave some hope in the moment. I don't know. Did you guys have any other nominees for a drive of the game?
Nope.
They did technically score another touchdown drive later.
Yeah, that was the drive of the game for sure. What a dime by Josh for that touchdown too.
Gorgeous timing.
Him and Diggs.
Beautiful.
We need more of that. And at that point in the game, I felt like Josh was loose. Like I felt, all right, Josh is reading the defense. He's loose. He's dropping dimes. Like get over it. Play a little bit more clean. Get away from these penalties. We can get back in this ball game, right? Like get the ball at half. Maybe we can double dip. This is a ball game. And then everything unraveled after that. But yeah, absolutely the drive of the game. So some silver lining there.
Yeah, that was, and what was nice on that touchdown too, the time, the great throw by Allen, the timing and the rapport with Diggs, but also that because that play was so timing based, it had to be perfectly thrown along with Diggs breaking out on his route. The offensive line held up tremendously, like that everything worked holistically on that play, and it was like, okay.
That drive specifically, Cody Ford was really good.
Yes, and you saw things where it was like, okay, and then everything kind of, not just the offensive line, but everything kind of fell apart after that, and here we are.
And, going into the defense, this defensive line, I was really hopeful today that, hey, I know it's going to be a stretch. We lost Justin Zimmer for the season. Having Starr out, this is going to be asking a lot going against this offensive line against the Colts. I was more worried about this than I was the Bills' offensive line, and it was as bad or worse. Ed Oliver tried. I think that Ed Oliver made some flashes here or there, but it was ugly. What do you think about this defensive line?
I thought it was interesting when we saw the inactives come out again. They went with the same defensive line rotation basically that they did last week with the 9-man defensive line, 6 defensive ends, 3 defensive tackles, which means, okay, we're going to have scenarios where Obata's going to have to kick inside. Carlos Basham's going to have to kick inside. We're going to have to see those guys display that versatility. I didn't like, it's hindsight, but I didn't like that going into the game with what the Colts can do on the offensive line. Jonathan Taylor came into this game, as we know, crushing it and doing fantastic things. But he had 99 zone runs and 57 gap. That's in today's NFL, where in 2020, there were over 9,000 zone runs for the entire NFL last year and only like about 3,200 gap runs. The NFL is a heavy zone running league now. The Colts, the fact that Jonathan Taylor had 99 zone runs and 57 gap shows you that that's a close margin in today's NFL, shows you the Colts like to vary it up. They will run gap schemes. They will run zone. They will run a multitude of things. They can do that. They did that today. They ran inside zone nonstop. They ran powers inside. They ran traps. It looked like they were running duo at times, and they were just blowing the Bills up on the interior. And it was hard to generate anything from that because the Colts were able just to continue to go to that well and open the Bills up from the inside. They were double teaming Ed Oliver and able to kick him out. They were washing down Harrison Phillips multiple times. The Bills just did not have an answer on the interior of this defense against that Colts offense. And it's frustratingly, I look at Carson Wentz's numbers, and he was 11 of 20 for 106 yards and a touchdown. Granted, he made some timely throws, and he had a terrific escape from Mario Addison, which could have been a really momentum-turning thing, which is unfortunate. But we've seen him make those plays before. This game came down to Jonathan Taylor, and Hines had some carries. Taylor had 32 carries for 185 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had on that first drive multiple carries of 10-plus yards after he came into the league leading the NFL in 10-plus carries. They set that tone from the beginning, attacking the Bills on the interior. And I think that's maybe my biggest regret of this game is I know you maybe don't feel comfortable with guys on the practice squad or bigger bodies, but we cannot go into a game against a team that wants to run the ball. And I'm not even going to say a zone and gap type of thing, but a team that wants to run the ball physically like the Colts. We cannot come into a game like that with light bodies up front in terms of size. We need somebody to be able to be rock steady, eat some space, especially with Starr out, because guys were just getting moved. Because that's what it is for everyone, right? Like zone, you're blocking an area. Gap or like power runs, you're literally running to a spot. In order to do that, you have to be physical and you have to move a guy out of the way. And that was happening to the Bills defenders on the interior over and over again. As Aaron mentioned offline, like the Colts are a physical team, and the Bills just got out physicaled on that defensive line time after time, play after play. And when you're getting eaten on the interior like that, it's really hard to gain any momentum and traction defensively. And it was rough.
Yeah, for me, you nailed it. Physicality. Going into this game, that was my biggest concern about this matchup. I don't know. I haven't seen it out of this Bills team that they can match another team's physicality. We saw it some years ago, that San Francisco game last year. That was a physical game, and the Bills came up and matched the 49ers physicality in that game. We haven't seen it so far this year out of the Bills, where they're going up and matching the physicality of a team. And some of that's unfortunately the design of how they've chosen to build this team on both lines, right? Like they have a Ferrari on offense, and they want to run that Ferrari on offense, and on defense we talked about the Lambo package and going lighter, and that NASCAR
both of them.
type.
They built for the pass on both sides of the ball.
Absolutely. And when you come up to a team like this and the conditions like this, that's going to backfire. And unfortunately, also the timing of Star Lotulelei being out really hurts. I do think he makes a substantial difference in that interior. I don't know that it's a game-changing difference, but I think that's at least his type of presence was very much missed today. I think if you thought Star Latulei's contract was bad, I think this game was at least an indicator that Star Lotulelei is being paid fair, and that presence matters. For me, the big thing was I don't ever want to see Vernon Butler again on an active game day roster. He's that guy that's a 300-pound guy that's supposed to be somebody that isn't moved easily, and he's moved all over.
Just getting moved all over the place.
It doesn't even matter that he's.
I didn't even want to mention him.
I don't want to see him anymore, because honestly, actually, talking about this whole defensive line holistically, I didn't think the edge rushers had a terrible day. Jerry had a number of pressures. Mario doesn't end up with that sack.
But he still was in there creating pressures.
Yes, and people were killing Mario on Twitter, and I just want to come out in defense. That roughing the passer on Mario, I didn't see a clear look, but he was pushed in.
He was pushed.
Carson
and you could see him when he came off the side. The coach asked what happened. He was like, I dipped under and he pushed me in. That's what
pushed
happened.
him in, and that stinks that flag got called, because that drive could have stalled right there. And so I get people being
Klein
frustrated.
also got called for interference on that play too.
Yes,
anyway,
again, I didn't get a good clear look at that, but yeah, I'm not mad at Mario Addison for that. And then the missed sack, that sucks, and I'll blame him for that. That stinks. But he got some good pressures today. So the edge defenders, I don't think did a terrible job in doing what they're supposed to do. They're not great run defenders, right? Like, we're built for the pass. We want these guys to get in and get pressures. They were getting some pressures and interrupting things for Carson Wentz. It was totally the interior defensive line, and getting Star back will help. But my concern is sort of looking into the future. What's life like without Star, or when Star's not available? And that needs to be addressed here this spring in this offseason. They've got to get Vernon Butler out of town and get somebody in here that can at least be somebody that takes up multiple blocks and doesn't get pushed around. Well,
and they showed it, both lines have now shown where we had some questions, and then you have domino effect impacts where you lose Zimmer and Star, you lose Feliciano and Brown, you compound that by Tremaine Edmonds. It shows that we had depth in areas that were now tested, and they're not the areas that we needed to test. And I think Julio, brings up the point here with, you'd shown it earlier, but these are easy to see on days like today. I'm so curious to see how the rest of the season plays out. In the playoffs, high-scoring teams have done plenty well. I'm curious to see where that plays out, but it certainly looks like the case today. And I want to make sure to show Dave's, asking about this. I don't know if it's necessarily there. I think the teams that have done that, it's been more pressure they've gotten or what they've forced to do when the Bills don't have to keep in a sixth offensive lineman, have Reggie Gilliam on the field 50% of the snaps, then you can take more advantage of their secondary. When you have to spend all that time game planning, scheming, adding extra protection, it makes it harder to take advantage of those, porous secondaries.
People on the podcast, Dave is asking, can you pull that back up? Just so people don't.
He said, what is your opinion on what's going on in coverage this year? Seems like bad pass defenses are giving Josh in the passing game fits. Is this an overreaction? Not totally accurate. Cause for concern. It's definitely valid concern, but again, it's, I think, more so what they've had to do to compensate for the injuries up front, the lack of protection, the inability to go there when they've been okay up front, you've seen them attack downfield and be able to take advantage with the weapons they have outside. I don't think that's always the case.
There's also a little bit of this that goes into that this is the NFL and teams know what they're bad at and that they are working on that consistently. The Colts have good defensive backs. They just weren't playing well up to this point this year. And so they're going to scheme and work and try to find ways to fix that stuff. We've seen it happen with the Bills, right? Years ago, gap integrity was an issue. Run defense was an issue. They fixed it along the way. And I'm sure those teams going into it were like, oh, we can run all over the Bills. They're terrible in the run. Look at what they've done the last 4 weeks. And then they start to tighten those things up. And so that's always going to be a thing in the NFL. You're always kind of chasing yourself and self-evaluating. So some of that's built into that as well. But when you can rush 4 and drop back, that's always going to be hard on a quarterback.
Yes. And see, that's I wanted to get that in there with this. It's say you send everybody in a route on offense, right? Minus the offensive line and the quarterback. That's 6 people. So offensive line, quarterback, that's 6 out of 11. 6 minus 11 is 5. Maximum people you can send into a route is 5 people. If the defense is only rushing 4, that's 7 in coverage versus those 5 guys. If you have a tight end staying into block, that's 1 less person out in the route. If you have a running back staying into block, that's 1 less, so on and so forth. If you've gone extra linemen, so on and so forth. These teams that have bad pass defenses, usually if you have a bad pass defense, you're throwing more guys in coverage. So they're playing more coverage. They've got more numbers in that advantage, adding into the fact that maybe they have a bad pass defense because they're more loaded up front with talent. So they can just rush 4 and rush 3 and get after the Bills while playing these guys in coverage. We're seeing that time and time again for teams playing the Bills. They're dropping 7, sometimes 8 guys into coverage because they can get there with 4 or 3.
Yeah, and still getting pressure. That's the
exactly. Key. That is the key. And that's why we're seeing it. So these bad pass defenses, maybe you have a bad pass defense, but they have a good front 4. And so they're like, well, we'll just rely on the front 4. We'll throw more numbers against it and play the odds. And that's what's happening on a decently regular basis against the Bills offense. And teams are just playing zone, rushing 4, and either getting home or Josh isn't taking advantage of it.
Yeah, getting back to the linebacker play here, it's, I think, a very healthy example of the people who have been hating on Tremaine Edmunds. The difference today and the inability to get away and move in space before the lineman can get to the second level, being able to allow, Jonathan Taylor to move and create space and be able to get out into there with his patient running style. It's been an incredibly difficult task. And WD here saying, this got me thinking how we need a retractable roof. If we want to be a throwing team, why would you want to play in this type of weather? Puts a disadvantage every time. I don't think they're choosing that. That they certainly would prefer good weather and to be able to go through there. But yeah, I got like a retractable roof added onto there. I don't live in Western New York, so I wouldn't have to pay for it.
It's an excuse. It's an excuse. Whenever the team plays crappy, all the domers come out and they want to say, well, this is why we need a dome. You know what? Indy's a dome team and they're built to beat teams like this. If you want to be one of the best teams in the NFL, good teams don't use weather as an excuse. The New England Patriots went 20 years playing outdoors, had record-breaking passing offenses, and blasted their way through the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers has had great success playing in Green Bay. Like, it gets cold in Baltimore. I hate to tell you, in January,
Kansas City has bad weather.
Kansas City in that AFC Championship game wasn't great weather. Like, you're going to have to go places. Pittsburgh, all these places are bad weather cities. So, yeah, maybe you can get a dome and get yourself neutral weather for 8 games a year. That's great. Maybe it makes a difference. I don't know if it does or not. But to me, it seems more like an excuse then. Like, if you're really an elite NFL team, you win a game in bad weather. It's happened historically. So I get frustrated with the dome excuse. I don't care if the Bills build a dome or not. That doesn't matter to me. I have no preference either way, but I don't love using it as an excuse for why they lose games.
So Anthony, did today help prove for you why AJ Klein's better than Tremaine Edmunds?
Well, he's always been better than Tremaine Edmunds. You just need to look at the tape. I like AJ Klein. And I think he's okay in a depth role. I think he's okay if we want to sub out.
He's better than most teams' backup linebackers.
Yes. I like what he adds on special teams. I like the bite and the little bit extra violence that he adds. But I mentioned it last week several times throughout. I mentioned the post game and in the shows that we did during the week. I just cautioned everyone with how there was a lot of, oh man, Klein killed it. We don't need Tremaine. He played great. He made a lot of flashy plays and he did play well, but there were certain times where he showed the vulnerability that he has in his game. Today, we saw more of that. We saw where sometimes being that heady and having that much experience doesn't matter when you don't have it athletically to compete with certain guys, i.e. Jonathan Taylor. And we saw him tested time and time again. I also thought he got, for how athletically limited he is, physicality and strength is more of his calling card. We saw him get outmatched a lot in terms of physical piece and letting guys get into his body. Yeah, I don't know why we can't do that, Mac. It's almost like it's hard to build an NFL team.
Max Stacks here proposing, guys, why can't we just have better players at every single position? It's a great proposal. That is, I am on board with that plan. That's what I think we should do going forward, honestly.
Actually, I'd rather do this one that Colin said, trade Diggs.
It wasn't him. Actually, the proposal was up higher.
Oh, got it.
Emphatically all caps saying we should trade Diggs. Colin was asking.
Trade Diggs?
I think he said trade. Like, should we trade Diggs maybe for a guard? Like, you see what kind of guard?
Maybe we can trade Diggs for a dome.
Trade Diggs for a dome. There we go.
Trade
Stephon Diggs for a dome.
I would try and trade Cody Ford for Quentin Nelson and Jonathan Taylor. I don't know why Brandon Beane hasn't thought of that.
And the dome.
We didn't even do anything at the trade deadline.
That's it. That is it. We trade Stephon Diggs for Quentin Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, and their dome. Championship.
And see, that shows, it goes back to my biggest point of Beane is lazy. And he didn't do anything at the deadline because we should have moved forward for both those guys. And see, normally I don't like to get into this, but this comment here, if you think Edmonds would make a difference in this game, you really don't understand the trenches. If anything, it would be worse. The team is soft. I understand what happened on the interior of the offensive line, but what the Bills had going into this game with the absence of big bodies in the interior, they had to try and penetrate. They wanted to one gap. They wanted to get into the backfield, right?
It's actually the opposite. Edmonds' quickness would have actually been able to compensate for the Vernon Butlers of the world better than A.J. Klein,
That's exactly
who gets blocked
what it
at
is.
the second level more easily.
We're not saying Tremaine Edmonds comes in and they shut down Jonathan Taylor completely. But with what the Bills' game plan was today and how they operated, given the personnel grouping they decided to go with in terms of their actives and inactives, Tremaine Edmonds, I think, would have helped today, making plays into the backfield, penetrating, holding Jonathan Taylor and maybe reducing some of those runs and opportunities like that, mitigating some of that. I definitely think Edmonds would have made a difference today. And again, I like AJ Klein. I think he's a very capable fill-in. I think he's good depth. He's good on special teams. I like him as a leader and the type of person that he is. But today we saw that the limitations he does have, it's a reason why we do have Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano as the type of linebackers we're going after in this defense, especially when you run a nickel-based defense. Like, you need to have linebackers that can do anything and everything at all times. And yeah, we were a little vulnerable in that area today.
Talking about being a nickel-based defense, actually, I think this is a good segue into the defensive backs, because I think, we had some conversations in DMs with our content crew about, why didn't they go towards a little bit more of the 4-3 as they were getting run on? I think it's that they trust Taron Johnson as a run defender more than they trust Dotson or Matakevich to come in. They're already thin at linebacker. That would be Klein, right? To go to the 4-3 normally, if you had Edmonds, then you would bring Klein in. And I think that's maybe a more valid thing in a game like this, where if you had Edmonds and you're still getting beat up on the run, then you bring Klein in to be that third linebacker. But going, I think, from Taron Johnson in the slot to Terrell Dotson or Tyler Matakevich, there's no net gain there in run defense. And then you lose a lot in coverage, right? If what they go play action or whatever they're going to do, they're not just going to run the ball.
And Taron Johnson is for as small as he is or whatever, he's very good coming forward and fighting through traffic. And he plays like a linebacker at times. We make that joke all the time. Like, so there's not a net gain.
No, and it's what allows them to stay in that base. Base is nickel, by the way.
In a game like today, I don't think Terrell Dodson or Andre Smith or Tyler Matakevich is a better defender against the run than Taron Johnson.
No, I don't believe he is. And but back to this DB room, guys. Nothing special, nothing really. In a game like this, you need somebody to come in and make a turnover, get the ball back when the game's getting out of hand. We bragged about how many turnovers they got against the Jets. Nothing today. They weren't able to get their hands on the balls.
A lot of those tip balls fluttering, falling harmlessly to the ground. They had fallen in our arms before, but a game where Wentz goes 11 of 20 for 106 yards. the DBs weren't the reason they lost today. Not the best display of tackling we've ever
seen.
Couple
third downs given up. Not a great display of tackling. It wasn't an efficient passing day for Colts and Wentz, but when they needed a play, they are the ones that made a play, and the Bills defensive backs didn't. And that was my problem. This is supposed to be the linchpin of what makes this defense tick. And when you need your team to make a play, that's the unit I rely on. Like, I need a turner. I need something to spark this team, and that's what has been coming from this Bills defensive backs, and they just couldn't make a play, whether it was a third down, conversion or getting a turnover, making a big play. We just didn't see it. And to me, that was frustrating, and super frustrated by the call on Jordan Poyer on the sideline. I don't know, last year we saw Jordan Poyer hit a guy well out of bounds, out of frustration, was a legitimate penalty. I don't think this one was, and that was a pretty big penalty. Not that the game was already sort of out of hand, and it seemed like frustration, but it wasn't. I don't know. You guys got anything? He was still in
bounds. He was right there, like that. Yeah. He was trying to tiptoe up the sideline. If you're going to try to stay in bounds, if you're going to try to gain more yards, you are opening yourself up to getting hit. Like that. That's how football works.
Yeah. And people wanted to nitpick that Taron Johnson call, the defensive pass interference, the holding on Taron Johnson. I do, as much as I love Taron Johnson, technically he grabbed the offensive player's hip and turned him around, and you can't do it. And I believe that officials were not calling the game evenly and with consistency. Correct. So I will get to that argument.
There was more contact on Gabe Davis on Josh Allen's first interception than what Taron Johnson had. So if you're going to call that, I'd like to see it both ways.
I want consistency, but Taron, it was a penalty.
Yeah.
What do you got on the DBs?
Not the reason we lost. I honestly don't have too much to add. They weren't the reason we lost. It would have been nice if they could have made some of those timely plays. It would have been nice on those third and longs if Trey had better coverage on Michael Pittman, and if Levi doesn't get beat by T.Y. Hilton. But that's also tying back to the coaching piece, we'll talk later. That was a great call from the Colts. They anticipated man coverage coming.
Yeah, Levi on a crosser. Tough.
Boom. Levi on a crosser against one of the still fastest receivers in the NFL in T.Y. Hilton.
The one thing he could do is still probably run a drag.
Exactly. Like, he's either running a drag or he's running a vert, and you get man coverage. You get enough time. Also, credit on that, too. Like, we keep talking about these guys making plays. Wentz gets crushed on that play, but he stays in the pocket and just gets nailed. And as he's getting hit, he puts the ball in perfect position and throws a dime. Like, it would have been nice if we had our corners or our secondary as a whole step up, get some of those takeaways or make some of those shutdown plays. Again, they weren't the reason we lost, but it would have been nice for them to step up with how key they've been and how much they've stepped up this year. We really needed them to make some plays today, and unfortunately, it just didn't shake our way.
So today, our player spotlight, I'm going to use this to lead right into our next topic, which is special teams. My player spotlight is Isaiah McKenzie. And just adding another piece to that people have tried to come yell at us over and over again, that, but look what happens when he gets the ball in his hands today. Yeah, I saw him try to have the ball in his hands today. It didn't go well. I'm done. I'm all the way done. There is nothing that he can do with the ball in his hands after the poor decision-making and after the poor ball security that makes up for giving the ball away. That was a back-breaking play at the worst possible moment where the Bills had a chance to get back into the game.
Had a chance to double dip, Greg. We were in double dip territory.
2 minutes and 15 seconds left. You've got a chance to be able to go. You were down 10, but you had the chance to end the half on a score, come back in the second half, and you immediately go, and I get it. We don't know what would have happened. They got punched in the mouth the rest of the game. But at that point, you don't know how the rest of that game is going to go. And if they don't have that demoralizing moment of like, oh, God, here it goes again, that's impossible not to wash over the rest of the team and to be like, oh, well, screw it. I guess we, it's just, it's impossible for that not to have that impact. And just at a critical moment where they could not afford it, I don't know how he can re-earn that trust in my mind. I don't know that I'm going to feel comfortable with him as our return man in a Bills uniform, period, ever, the rest of time.
Yeah, there's a saying, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Isaiah McKenzie's been showing us who he is. This has been a problem since college. It's never corrected. It's been a problem this year. And I think there's some recency bias that happens. We see him have that big explosive return and everyone's like, Isaiah McKenzie's so much fun. This is great. He's way better than Andre Roberts was a year ago. I would take I don't want this year's Andre Roberts, but I need consistency from special teams.
We need the guy who was that great decision maker, whoever that next guy is. That's not Andre Roberts anymore, but whoever that next guy is.
Yes.
Maybe, pray to God, maybe it's Marcus Stevenson.
I tweeted it out. Like, I will take consistency way above the potential of explosive plays on special teams. I just need you to be consistent. These are I honestly should mark an extra 3 marks on toxic differential next to that play. A special teams turnover is much worse. Like it's statistically, when you have punt blocked or this type of turnover, like that's such a game-changing play, and it's so hard to dig yourselves out of that. And to me, it seems like teams are willing to kick to Isaiah McKenzie and allow him to return, because they say 100%. They're saying, yeah, maybe it'll be a big one and he can get a 30, 40-yard return. But you know what? It's just as likely he's going to screw this up and we're going to be able to make a big play on this. And I hate that. And so anyone that came at me and was like, oh, Isaiah, I love you. These guys are idiots. Don't listen to them. I'm not an idiot, and I don't want to see Isaiah McKenzie return kicks anymore. I really would like to see Stevenson.
Yeah, I hope he goes searches his name in the mentions today. See how that goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with this spotlight, of Isaiah McKenzie. And then as we start to transition into special teams here, I was not frustrated, but disappointed in the amount of flack that you two got and then us as a show got with the criticism we've, put towards Isaiah McKenzie, because I didn't think anything we said was inaccurate. When he gets the ball in his hands, he can be electric and explosive and is fun, but we are still concerned with his ball security and his decision-making. And today was another example of not decision-making, but ball security. And you saw that wasn't the play that I think, that wasn't like holistically what lost it, but I thought that was a huge momentum-changing thing. We're down by not a lot. We're getting the ball, double dip opportunity. I thought that sucked all the energy and momentum. The defense just gets a stop. They just held them to 3, and then they're sitting there on the sideline, because that's also from like a player perspective, right? Like you're sitting there and you're coaching up. It's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And then you hear the crowd and you're like, oh, what happened? Oh, we got to go back onto the field. And that was a killer for us. The Tennessee Titans lost to the Houston Texans today. They had a muff punt return that led to a touchdown for the Texans that ended up being the difference in that game. To Aaron's point, those special teams turnovers can be killer, because I almost, to Aaron, like not even to make a joke out of it, I feel like a special teams turnover should be worth like 2 or double toxic differential or something like that, because they're that hurtful. And that was disappointing from McKenzie today. Special teams as a whole wasn't great. I know Bass with the wind and the rain and the distance of the kicks, but he was not what we had anticipated him to be today, with those missed kicks. Not a great day all around from special teams, even from
I'd say today was the worst overall special teams day we've had. 2 misses.
Oh, DVOA is taking a hit.
The return
I was say the
was
opening
bad.
kickoff.
Yeah, they gave up big returns that we haven't seen all year. Today was the worst special teams day overall we've seen this season.
Yeah, we got hammered in all 3 phases of special teams in terms of field goals, coverage,
Matt Hawk's punt was 55 yards.
He had a nice punt.
That looked great. But maybe it was his fault.
Can we go back to him sucking at punting and everything?
Yeah, good? Can we trade that? I don't like this the other way around. I'm okay where all the rest of special teams is good and he sucks. It's not as fun when he's the only good part and everyone else sucks.
If anything, that's what cost the Bills the entire game. The whole rest of the offense and defense were bad because Hawk had a good punt. Yeah, that's what Thanos had to do to get the Soul Stone.
What did it cost?
Everything. Everything for Hawk to get a good punt. Yeah, just not a microcosm of the day as a whole for the Bills. Not good offensively, not good defensively, a bit slack, with some meat on the bone. As Greg, you like to say there, with some meat on the bone left for the special teams. So just following suit for the rest of the phases here in terms of just not a good day for another unit for the Buffalo Bills.
And one more group that needs to hear about it is the coaching.
Biggest one.
Because if there's a piece that I'm going to take McKenzie to task, the second most deflating and demoralizing decision that rippled through the team was Sean McDermott choosing to kick a field goal in that 4th and 5 spot. And
with the wind and the rain.
Josh was not happy about it.
If I am possibly the largest Sean McDermott defender, I am constantly in favor of him, defending him, supporting him, showing what a huge asset he's been to the organization. Today, he showed the team he didn't have confidence in them, and it rippled through the rest of the team and showed them that, hey, I don't think you guys can pick this up. I'd rather kick into the wind while it's raining from 49 yards out. It was so frustrating to see him choose to do that in the moment, and to know that, okay, I get it, we're down 17. I understand the math. I understand the guys in your ear. I understand the offense hasn't looked great. Do you not recognize the message that you're sending to this team right now? Do you not grasp what you're telling them when you say, no, we need to go for it, we need to kick the field goal here? I get it, you're down 17. I get the math. I get that that's 3 scores. This is one of the 3 scores. Mathematically, it was not a terrible decision.
Right.
I would even guess that the analytics and the odds of converting on 4th and 5 even told him that, yes, go ahead and go for it. I hated the message that it sent to the team, and I was just infuriated that, come on, man, don't cut them out like that right then. And I don't think it's been all downhill. A couple people chimed in that, ever since the AFC Championship game, he's lost, any of the guts that he had before. It's not that simple. We've had plenty of times we've gone for it. There's been more conservative play calling than I'd like to see, and I think that if you're going to build this Ferrari that Aaron referenced earlier, then that goes into these decisions as well. You need to lean into that and say, hey, if we're going to have a pass-heavy, high-scoring offense, then don't lean back on the conservative play style, because we didn't build a conservative punch-you-in-the-mouth 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense. It's not what we have. Lean into it and go for it in 4th down because you have a Ferrari in the garage.
Yeah, I get the frustration with it. I think for me, the bigger frustration with McDermott himself is I don't believe the coach speak is just false and that it's hollow, and the things about the process and doing all these things. But what I see this team being consistently sloppy when it comes to penalties. We see bad penalties and bad spots a number of times.
Critical spots
pushing this team back. A lot of getting, that 3rd down, a pre-snap penalty, push them back, and then you get another holding penalty, and now you're at 3rd and 18. And you put yourself totally out of field goal range like that. That's a game-changing scenario for you. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills, leading into this week, he talked about how the Colts were like the 4th least penalized team in the league, and the Bills were a top 5 most penalized team in this league. And that type of stuff's unacceptable. And that does fall back on coaching. And then another thing, and more of a not something you can quantify, is I knew this was going to be a super physical game, right? You guys knew. We're looking at this matchup. The coaches clearly knew, and he didn't get his guys up to match the physicality of the team that they played against. And if you're a front running type team, if you believe you're contending for a Super Bowl, you shouldn't be outmatched so physically for 4 quarters of a game where it's this embarrassing. And to me, that's probably the biggest letdown. Isn't that they lost this game? It's how they lost this game. And Jacksonville, Griffin had talked about after that Jacksonville game where he looked over at the sidelines and this Bills team didn't want it, and they didn't look like they wanted it. I bet the Colts players were saying the same exact thing in this game, that once this Bills team got punched in the mouth, they all started feeling sorry for themselves and looking kind of dejected and beat up. And that's on coaching. Like, you have to get your team up to match the physicality of another team, and they just haven't. And so for that reason, I'm very frustrated right now with McDermott. I think they can turn things around, but to the coordinators, I saw a tweet out, why didn't the Bills scheme work against this, offense on with the Bills defensive scheme? And I don't know that it was a game plan or scheme issue. I think they just were outmatched in terms of talent in the interior line. I don't know what much more Leslie Frazier could have done in terms of sending a different scheme to stop Jonathan Taylor today. Like, the stars just aligned without Star Lotulelei, without Tremaine Edmonds. I think maybe the only thing you could say is that them leaning a little bit too much into Vernon Butler and being willing to put him out there a number of times I could knock Frazier for, but I don't know if that was a scheme thing. And same with Brian Daboll. I actually thought Brian Daboll schemed up a pretty nice, especially in those scripted plays to start the game. Like, he knew the offensive line was going to be an issue.
Out of there.
He played Josh to the weaknesses that they knew they were going to see in this game and tried to put the players in position, and the players didn't execute in this game. So I have no problems necessarily with those aspects of the coaching staff. It was more the non-quantitative, like knew this was going to be a big game. You know, the Pats are right on your back. You knew this was going to be a physical game in bad weather, and your team came out and was flat and didn't match the physicality of the opponent. And that to me is unacceptable.
Yeah, it was such an odd game from an in-game execution standpoint and a coaching and preparation standpoint and getting up for it. And I really think that first drive set the tone. I had Rashad McGinnis on Wednesday, and he talked about how Frank Reich's first 15 is the key to like every Colts game and how they start out strong and what Frank Reich scripts up. And I thought their first drive was so well done from a Colts perspective. They came out and everybody and their mother was like, well, stop Jonathan Taylor. They don't give it to Jonathan Taylor the first two times. They finally give it to him on third down. He gets hit in the backfield, but he still gets the first down. They mixed the run with the pass. They mixed up the kind of runs they had. They had inside. They had outside. They had the jet sweep to Hines. They just kept the Bills defense off balance, kind of poking and prodding and testing out multiple things. And then after that first drive, it seemed like they kind of were like, okay, hey, we did all these things. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't. Boom, let's go after it. And then they just did it drive after drive and attacked. And I feel like the Bills had no answer for that in any way. It just seemed like we continued to go to the well, especially defensively. And the Colts were like, okay, just you guys can keep doing that. And we're just going to keep doing this. And we just kept seeing holes opened up, and we just kept seeing the same kind of coverage schemes on the back end. And we saw every throw for Josh just seemed difficult. It didn't seem like even like a 5-yard completion. It just seemed bleh. Like even when we get a first down, it just seemed like we had to work so hard to get that first down. And I think Aaron's point of the whole getting the team up for it, I think that's another big one. We've seen an emotional difference in this team ever since the Kansas City Chiefs game. We saw how up they were for that in every way, shape, and form. And we've seen a little less almost every single week. And we saw how geeked up the Jags were. We saw how geeked up the Colts were. The Colts absolutely knew. They knew what we were talking about offline. We outplayed the Bills here last year in the playoffs, and we lost. We're not pleased. We want this game. We need this game because we're 5-5, and they came out like they needed this game, combined with whether that was the players executing on their own or the coaches setting them up for success. I thought the Bills had to take stock of that going into this week. And then within each drive, within the quarter, the half, the adjustments, it just seemed like I don't want to put it all on the coaching because the players definitely deserve a heavy amount from their poor execution and poor play. But I feel like this is another game where there were certain aspects of this team that I think could have been where the poor play could have been mitigated by certain things the coaching staff could have done. And I feel like we didn't see that.
But to your point earlier, and when you were saying like, that Steelers game was a wake up game, then that Titans game was a wake up game. And then the Jacksonville, oh man, embarrassing loss. That's the wake up game. I don't want to hear it anymore. Like you have to get up for these games. Like the AFC is a very tight race right now. You can't have, the Bills can't afford any more of this. They have to get this type of stuff behind them and get up for every game. There's no more sleeping on games and that one's a get up game. That's really what's going to set us off going forward.
No, I mean we're second in the AFC East now, right? Like on a statistical standpoint, percentage points.
Yeah, I think technically
7-4.
Yeah,
like not that again. That's not like we're done and the AFC East is lost. But to your point, Aaron, like this is
definitely backed ourselves into a wall.
Yeah, correct. We have to.
They have backed themselves in the corner for sure.
We need to refocus a little bit. This isn't. I think a lot of us, especially amongst like fans, and I've say even analysis for a little bit. The thought was like, well, what's Tennessee's schedule the rest of the year? We need to get this 1 seed. And now all of a sudden we have to kind of look internally and it's like, well, now we need to win the division first and then think about what's going forward. And there's no more wake-up calls. We've had several that have not woken up.
And just an FYI, in the chat, people talking about Frank Reich and the Colts, guess what? Their post-game shows and their fans and their 5 losses have been just as bad.
Totally.
And just as frustrating. What do you think Tennessee's fans are like right now? They just lost to the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
So as we kind of
Brown got hurt again.
to move forward, the biggest takeaway here is this season is not over.
And it's wacky. Mm-hmm. It's a wacky season.
The Browns barely beat the Lions today. The Ravens barely beat the Bears today. The Titans lost to the Houston Texans today. Bad teams are beating good teams. Good teams are stumbling and stubbing their toe and embarrassing themselves. There are no dominant teams in the NFL this year. There are no great teams. There are a bunch of talented but flawed teams. The Bills are one of those. When the Bills are healthy and playing well, they can still beat every team in the NFL. Like Aaron just said, they backed themselves into a corner. They have no more room for error. They have to be able to get things together. However, if they get Starr back, if they get Tremaine Edmonds back, if they get Spencer Brown back, they have a chance to put together a talented team that can outscore teams and that can get hot at the right time and go on a run. Some team in the NFL right now that has embarrassing losses, that has showed, horrible game film and, game scripts and plans that can beat them, is going to go out there and win a championship. One team is going to, because every team has done that. Every team has embarrassing losses. The Titans lost to the Jets and the Texans. They could still win a championship. Tons of teams have these embarrassing, horrible losses, and one of them is going to get their crap together, get healthy at the right time, get hot, go on a run, and win a championship. The Bills can still be that team.
Totally.
And be able to turn things around. Absolutely. The Bills are still very, very likely to make the playoffs. The Bills are still very likely to win the division and host a playoff game. The Bills can still get the first overall seed because no team in the AFC has any interest in claiming that number one overall seed. Everything is still in play. Now, the sad part is, Anthony, I think you said it 2 weeks ago, what we've lost is the safety net. What we've lost is the floor. What we don't know is how bad it could get. The Bills could unravel. The Bills could miss the playoffs. The Bills could have a horribly embarrassing second half of the season that we talk about forever. However, that is not a sure thing. I know it feels like that in the moments after an embarrassing loss. I know it feels like that after we just got our teeth kicked in front of everybody to the Indianapolis Colts. That is not written in stone. They are going to get some of these players back healthy. Those players make a difference. The Bills are a front-running team that when they get out in front of teams can embarrass teams and boat race them. They're going to do that again this year. They're going to boat race some teams. They're going to put up some huge scores. What they need is to get hot at the right time and to be able to do it against the teams that matter, and they can still do that. They showed it against the Chiefs. They've shown it in other games this year. They can show it again. They need to do it at the right time. I get it. It's frustrating. We're now walking across the tightrope without a safety net. We have no security that, hey, no matter what, they're absolutely gonna make the playoffs no matter what. We don't have that anymore. Things could go terribly wrong. However, we don't know that they're going to go terribly wrong. We don't know that they're already out of the playoffs. People in here talking about firing coaches and getting rid of Josh Allen, and that's insane. Yeah. Settle down, step back. They still have a talented team. They can still pull this out. I'm going to go have a coughing fit now and try not to die. Thank
you. This is still a playoff team in my opinion, but they've definitely made it harder. And so I think there's a fine line between the fans that are the sky's fallen, this team sucks, let's fire everyone. Like, that's not realistic, right? There's still plenty of games left. They still play the Patriots twice, even though the Patriots are leading the division as of today. They still have a chance to do that and beat that team. But I do think it's fair of the people that feel very worried right now about this team because of, yes, other teams have these embarrassing losses, but we expected this Bills team to be a dominant 2021 team, right? They've put this team together. This was a record-breaking offense. The defense is looking like the number one defense in football.
They said all the things in the offseason.
Yes, it's been all about championship all year long. We all predicted them to lose like a handful of games, and that still could happen, but it gets real tough right here. This is the defining, we talked about it last week, the defining month. And to start this month, they got punched in the face. And so they really, now's the time. There's no more room for error. They have a 4-day turnaround. That doesn't make me feel very good that there's a 4-day turnaround after a game like this. We'll see what happens. I don't even know that losing to the Saints ends the Bills season. My biggest problem with where they're at right now is the losses are all to AFC teams. So if things are too tight at the end of the season and they don't win the division, they could still have a good record, and that could put them out of the playoffs as losing to all these AFC teams. So that's something I don't like. But yeah, they could drop 2 in a row here and still win the division. Like, that's all still very much on the table. What matters is how they play the Patriots. And what I walk away from this game today, we talked about it a little bit here offline. Greg was saying, I don't know that the Patriots are as good as the Colts, and I think that's fair, but they are as physical. And that's what scares me, is that you're going to have to go into a team that has the confidence that they can hang with you, that believes they're up in that upper echelon of the NFL, has a really good coach who is going to have a good scheme for this game to take away some of your best players. And they're going to match your physicality. And this comes back to what we were just saying about the coaching staff. Can Sean McDermott in the next, what is it? They got 11 days after the Colts. So 16 days here. In the next 16 days, can he get his team up for the most important game of this season in playing the New England Patriots? I hope that he can. But I need to see it. That's going to be the big one here, is can they go and beat the Patriots? If they beat the Patriots, things start to be right in the world again. If they can get back on top of the AFC East, guarantee that playoff spot. I agree with Greg. We said it all year last year. It doesn't matter how you play in November. It's where you're at in December. If you can get hot in December, that's going to be the team that probably runs away and at least gets to the Super Bowl. I don't know if they go through and win the Super Bowl. The team that gets hot is going to go on a run this season. And the Bills just have to get all this stuff right and get hot. But it has to happen before they meet the Patriots.
Yeah, spot on. I think, my takeaways. First, I mean, obviously we're a Bills podcast, but really huge credit to the Indianapolis Colts. Their game plan, their execution. Jonathan Taylor is tremendous, and he showed why he's tremendous. He, in a year where everybody's like, who's like the MVP? It was Mahomes, or was it like Jonathan Taylor should be up there for MVP conversation. He is just looking like a stud. Yeah. So kudos to him and the Colts for what they did today. And I think that's also part of their perspective too. Like, the Colts were a team who had a rough schedule to start, and they had a bunch of injuries. They're a good football team. The Bills lost to a good football team. I think, to piggyback off of both of your guys' points, at this point with the Bills, with how we've seen them play, the mercurial nature and the front running and all the terms that we've thrown out here, I think this is very much a week-to-week team, where at this point we almost kind of don't know, which sucks. We almost kind of don't know like what we're going to get. Like, is it going to be good Bills? Is it going to be bad Bills? Is the opponent going to have the game plan? Are the Bills prepped right? Are they going to adjust right? We're seeing this kind of give and take week-to-week thing from them. And coming into Thanksgiving against the Saints had a rough loss today. They need a win. They'll be at home. They're a team that is, I hate to use the proverbial, words here, but they are a team that is full of dogs. Malcolm Jenkins and Demario Davis and Marshawn Lattimore and Cam Jordan. And I just happen to mention a bunch of defensive guys, but they are nasty. They are gritty. They play up to the challenge. That's going to be a tough game going into New Orleans against a team that's going to be ready for a fight that needs a win. I think it's very interesting to see what happens with the Bills this week, how they show up in that game. And then, the 11-day turnaround or whatever for New England. Man, I got goosebumps thinking about it. What a primetime game in Buffalo, Monday Night Football, like the division talk, massive game. Everybody and their mother that is not in Buffalo is starting to think, well, the Patriots are back and Mac Jones is the next Tom Brady because he's not terrible. And oh my God, and all this hyperbole and all these things. That's a tremendous game. We are going to really see over. Yeah, but the Saints do have this guy named Alvin Kamara who's like amazing. We don't know if he's going to play or what that looks like, but he's a really good dude. It's going to be very interesting to see over these next couple weeks. I don't think these next 2 games for the Saints, the game against the Saints and the game against the Pats, I don't think that determines the Bills season, but I think we will learn a lot about
that Pats one might.
Oh yeah, I think that Pats one is
game determines the season. Yeah,
pretty defining.
We're going to learn a lot about what this team is in terms of how far they can go, what they're going to do, what the seeding starts to shake out, if they're going to make the playoffs, what they're going to look like, what kind of damage they can do. Because they're playing some teams that have a formula that can work against the Bills, and it's
we're going to find out the same. The Patriots' next 4 games are Titans, Bills, Colts, Bills.
Yeah,
we're going to find out over the next month. We're going to find out who's really there and able to do that. It's 2 games against Patriots. They play tough games in between. The Bills play tough games in between. This is going to decide the season.
But this is it goes back to like I get real frustrated, right? Every preseason we hype up teams, a team, and everyone rides on that. Every week one, some team comes out of nowhere and has a great win. Everybody's like, "Oh man, the Jags are going to be great." And every year we do this same stuff. But every year we also know whoever's playing the best football come December is probably going to be the teams that have the best success going into the playoffs. But then every year it seems to be a surprise that when we get to December, we're waiting to figure out who the best teams are. And this year, probably more so than most years. Like you alluded to, Greg, there is no great team right now. And that's weird. But it's always been, hey, how do you look come December heading into the playoffs? And maybe this year more so than most, but we shouldn't be surprised by this.
Yeah, the Colts' reward for beating the Bills today, 3 of their next 4 games are Buccaneers, Patriots, Cardinals. Yeah. So there's
and Kyler's
no
going to come
stretch.
back. This isn't the Colt McCoy Cardinals.
Yeah, correct. That will be the real Cardinals by that time, not the current version that's at Christmas. So it's going to be interesting. We appreciate your guys' time today. The chat was awesome. Today has been an incredibly frustrating day.
I feel better.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
It's here. You were here. I didn't die, which is great.
Yeah. I'm gonna go play with my kids now and not just be miserable in the corner on my phone.
I'm gonna go eat some dinner. It's gonna be lovely. We'll be here for you. Make sure you're checking out. We had an awesome pregame show today. First show, the air raid hour and our preview show was awesome today. They had Bruce Nolan on. Really, really strong show. I was very impressed with them. Anthony's gonna be joining Eric tomorrow with Eric Wood to be able to break down.
I can't wait for that.
Which that's going to be awesome to watch and probably not that fun to prepare for. So best of luck with that, Anthony.
Eric's great though. Both Erics, obviously, are Eric Turner, but he's done shows with Eric Wood before, and you get so much.
Yeah, Thunderclock, appreciate you very much. We appreciate all the likes and help we can get there. Appreciate everybody in the chat today. Today was a tough one. We hope today's show helped you. Anthony and Aaron were awesome as always. Our sponsors, Uncle Jumbo's, the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code Cover1, get yourself $10 free. Herr, the best auto group here in New York State. Make sure you're checking them out for all of your automotive needs. Today was a tough day, but we will live to fight another day. We'll be here for you all week long. Make sure you check out Disguised Coverage with Anthony Prohaska, the Cover One preview show next Wednesday with Aaron and I. We are going to be here for you all the way through this Thanksgiving week with content to get you ready for another game. Hopefully the Bills are ready because we're going to be right back at this Thursday night, ready for a primetime game in front of everybody. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn and Anthony Prohaska, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.